Hello, everyone. Uh, I hope you can hear me. I should be live right now. Uh, I wait for some confirmation. Can you hear me? Mm, you should be able to hear me. Mm, maybe my chat is very delayed. Oh, okay. You can hear me. Okay. So, the first thing I want to talk about is how I'd like to approach covering this series because I have not I have not gone into detail about how I would cover an adaptation, even though I have covered Dune and to a lesser extent the Witcher series, but those were more world building focused. While I think I'll tap into the story and characters here as well. And the thing about adaptations is that how faithful they are is not necessarily representative of how good they are. So the story, the characters, the world should be evaluated in isolation without taking a look at the source material because uh, inherently by going from a book or in this case an excerpt, a list of notes to a series, you are going to have to make a lot of changes. So that is evident. You cannot make it the same. But there's the thing that when you take something established, something that exists in media elsewhere, then you also invoke people's knowledge of that thing. So, for a very easy example, if a movie has a dog in it, then the audience has an idea of what dogs are. They know dogs exist, how they behave. So, by simply putting a dog there, then you can rely on the fact that people know how they will act and they can expect it. But if you introduce changes, for example, dogs in that particular world breathe fire, then you have to establish that somehow. But this is a big change, so it's easy. You just show dogs breathing fire, and if you are consistent, it's okay. The problem would be with subtle changes, and this is especially notable with adaptations because if you make very small changes to character, to events, the audience does not necessarily know that you made a mistake or you actually meant to make it different. So even though you invoke the knowledge of something, a character they know, uh, by changing elements, you actually take them out of it. They will not necessarily know if you are competently doing something or you just don't care about the source material or don't know what it actually is. So there's a very high aversion people have towards unfaithful adaptations, and I think this is the underlying reason. And naturally, faithfulness should not affect how good something is, but this is such a strong element of it all that I think it has to be taken into account, especially when dealing with something so established and so rich as the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth as a whole. So Tolkien's work. Uh, there's also the question of it being woke or not, and I don't necessarily care if something is woke. It's not a well defined, not a well defined. Well, I don't even know what to call it. It's not well defined, and so for some people, it's enough that there's a person of color and it's woke. For others, it takes a lot more, and it doesn't. Uh, it's not there to make the story better or worse. It's more of a meta element. So while it shouldn't matter that something is woke, but it is clear that there's a correlation with putting woke elements into media that have a negative effect on the story because they are very clumsily crammed in there, and they do not really add or seamlessly fit in with the story. They are just plopped there for, well, either for promotional purposes or any reason really. And I think these are the main points I would have liked to address before going forward and taking a look at the 5 trailers we have, because I can get my thoughts together better if I can see what we have been shown already, and it's it's also better that you see it as well. Let me share my screen. I think this is going to be the first one. Yes. And well, let's just. I might get copyright strike, but I don't care because this channel is not monetized. So let's just see.
Haven't you ever wondered what else is out there?
So the first thing is that this is probably one of the few scenes which doesn't seem very fake. It's relatively well made, but that's probably because this is the first image that everyone will see when they take a look at the trailer. So that's evident. But they put the work in here, but you will see with other scenes that CGI is not at the level one would expect for the most expensive series ever made.
There's
And let me
wonders
play
in
the
this
dialogue.
world beyond our wonder.
So there's wonders in this world beyond our wondering. There is going to be a trend of pretty bad dialogue, especially for a trailer. So first off, you don't want to put in a sentence in the trailer that requires a bit of time to understand. That you want to put in strong but easy to understand sentences. But there's wonders in this world beyond our wondering. So this presumably means that wonders beyond the regions where they generally wander. But wander has 2 spellings, and but both of them sound the same, and they mean completely different things. So this is one of those sentences that could have been improved by simply switching wandering to well, uh, beyond our home or beyond our horizon. That's, for example, an easy fix. And you can also see these fellas here with huge antlers for reasons. I mean, this could be explained. It could be a religious thing or a cultural thing. They look very weird. They look very unwieldy. But if they are convinced that this is something they must do, then people will do dumb stuff like this.
I can feel it.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know why I stopped here. They can feel it. Yeah. Ah, yes, this scene right after that one. Uh, Climbing a steep, could not possibly be steeper, a 90 degrees wall of ice with a dagger in full armor. Now, there is that inconsistent thing that elves are sometimes weightless for some reason. For example, in the Hobbit, the last movie, there's that scene where Legolas is stepping on the stones that are falling, which is just dumb. And I've already talked about it that even though it's not consistent, if it would be, then that would mean that elves are very easy to push away. They cannot really exert too much force because they don't have the weight behind it. They would sneeze and they would just fly up. So we have to assume that they actually have weight. Besides, she's wearing armor, which very much has weight. And that dagger goes in really deep into that ice. Well, it's first of all, it's lucky that it's ice that deep, and there's not a huge slab of rock right behind it. But you have to hit that really hard. So this already breaks my suspension of disbelief. I don't believe that she's going to she's capable of climbing this, or that she's stupid enough to climb up here instead of going somewhere else. I'm 100% sure that this is not faster, and it is definitely harder than going around. But let's just continue. Ah, yes, this scene as well. He catches the arrow and fires it back. So, first off, he has arrows. He has already dodged the incoming projectile. Why the fuck would he try to catch it, which is, first of all, very hard to do? It's unless he's practicing this exact thing, he's going to be prone to make a mistake and step his hand. Then again, there's also the friction. I'm not even 100% certain if you could catch an arrow this way. I might be wrong on that, but it seems very impractical and very hard to do. And it's just there for the cool factor. And if so, in universe, even in universe, this would be done to seem cool because he has arrows. And this immediately describes this character to me as very vain. So that's their goal. Maybe that's something they didn't think would register with people. But either way, I really dislike this scene. Also, there's of course the pretty notable fact that he's a black elf, which is not necessarily something that would appear in Tolkien's works, but as I said, it's an adaptation. They can say that on the southern portions of the continent or towards the equator, there are also elves and they are black. So that's not necessarily breaking their own lore, which is by necessity different from Tolkien's lore. Although that's a pretty sleek haircut. I'm not sure you can do that with medieval technology. Maybe it's a magic barber. I don't know. Oh yes, this thing. Those those are tusks, I think, but the upper ones curl downwards, so they are. They are bad for dueling other creatures of this kind. They are bad for digging up stuff from the ground. They are bad for attacking. They are bad for everything. And they touch the other one. So that's not going to go deep into anything, even if they somehow strike something from the side. This is just, I think it was done to make it look unique, to have a recognizable design that's distinct, but it's dumb. It's just dumb. Oh, yes. There's also a black dwarf without a beard, uh, who's a queen. Now, for the elf, I can understand them being black. For a dwarf, which is a race that's underground, it's less believable. I mean, in their lore, maybe there are dwarves on the surface and she came from around the equator as well. In their world, maybe dwarven women don't have beards. So that's a possibility. Still, I don't think we will get any confirmation about that. And there's this trend with Hollywood that they think um they think that uh, ethnicity is just a roll of the dice, and that they appear here and there just out of nowhere, in spite of the fact that people were shaped by their environment and the genetic pool that was around their area. So there's a lot more to it than just a lottery. And that's probably incongruent with their views, but it would be nice to see that these characters are given a backstory that justifies why they look the way they look, which I don't think we'll get, but maybe we will. And everything right there was so fast that I had no chance to register any of it. But that's trailers for you. Yeah, that's the end of the first one. So let me open up the next one, which is going to be one of the less interesting ones. I don't think I will be able to comment too much. Um, which one is it? This one should be it, yeah. So this trailer is the one with the meteor. And again, this is very pretty, but this is obviously a real place. So there's not much I can praise about it. Good job, nature, I guess. Yes, again, we have a black hobbit, or Harfoot, as they say, because they probably don't have the copyright for the word hobbit, so they have to use Harfoot, which is a hobbit. But never mind that. So he's black. He could be from around the equator as well. We probably won't get any confirmation about it, but it's a bit strange that every major race, that being, or non-human race, I mean, elves, hobbits, and dwarves, each have exactly one black character. That's weird, I think. But maybe that's because they migrated there, so they are shown to be not as common as the locals. Maybe that's the reason.
The skies are strange.
Yes, it didn't have subtitles because this one doesn't have, but he said very oddly that skies are strange. And maybe it's just me, maybe I haven't heard this particular accent, but it feels very forced to me. I don't think that's how a normal person would talk, and maybe that's just my ignorance. But yeah, it took me out of it a bit. Reused footage. This is one of those scenes that looks very fake. The birds don't look real. The boat might be real, but it looks plastic. It's one of those shots that just really, well, it takes you out of the experience. I don't have a better expression for it. Also, that's a very, very fast meteor. It's either very small and close, or it's incredibly fast. I mean, there's- and this is also incredibly fake looking. But I don't have anything of substance to it. It just, you know, it's not real. And here we see an ant. That's neat, I guess. And that was the most boring trailer. Let me pull up the next one. It should be this one, yes. So, let's see.
There was a time when the world was so young.
Now, I didn't let it play in full, but this is the only part, I think, where I felt the music was reminiscent of the Jackson trilogy. And this was a really good touch. Even if it's not reminiscent, it was good music. And I can't even recall the music under the last trailers, because even though we just watched them, but they were very generic. But let me play it again. I think this is a good music. I'm not exactly sure about the singing afterwards, but it starts very strong.
There was a time when the world was so young. There had not yet been a sunrise.
Yes, so this is early on in the Tolkien lore, when the world was flat and there was no sun, but let me go a bit further. So there are these huge trees that give off light. And my main problem with that would be the area does not reflect that. There is only one place from where the light shines. So every plant would adapt to that. So even if it does not radiate heat, the plants that do not need a dark period for their photosynthesis would grow near to it. And as we move further away, the foliage would change drastically. And for example, you can see that on this little hill here, there's constant, well, it's a dusk-like condition. So there would be constant shading. So the plants would look drastically different than the plants right around here, for example, where there's constant light. And this just looks like any old landscape from Earth, because it probably is. But yeah, the world does not reflect its own rules, which is that, let me,
There had not yet been a sunrise.
there are these
But even then,
sun trees.
there was light.
Call to me, lands far away. Elves have forests to protect. Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain.
I hate this fucking line. Men their fields of grain. So humans are the only people who have agriculture. The dwarves, the elves, they don't grow anything. What do they eat? Each other. It's it's my pet peeve that in fantasy it is very often overlooked that a nation has to be fed, and the population is very much dependent on a steady supply, a reliable supply of food. So either this Harfoot who's speaking is really stupid and has never seen an elven field of grain or anything they grow, but it cannot be the reality. And the fact that this is in the trailer tells me that the showrunners think this is a reality, that the thing that differentiates humans from the other races is that they grow their fucking food, whereas every civilization has to grow their food or exclusively rely on raiding, which is, I don't think that's what dwarves and elves do. I don't think they just come down here and kill and rape everyone and take their grain. I think they have to have some form of agriculture or aquaculture or forestry or something. They have to have something. But yeah, let's just let's just go.
But we Harfoots have each other.
And the other races don't have each other. That's that's technically racist, but let's not dwell on it.
We're safe.
Yeah, she says they're safe because they have each other, but yeah, they probably. I'm guessing that she's wrong in the narrative as well, so I don't think I have to really explore this idea, but they're pretty much not safe.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel. Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
So far, dialogue is okay. It's nothing spectacular, but it's functional. But then there's this.
It is over.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I have seen.
So this is something every YouTuber ever has pointed out, that Elrond, presumably Elrond, says that no, sorry, Galadriel says that you have not seen what I have seen. And Elrond says, maybe not, but I have seen other stuff and I have experience. So I'm telling you this because I think this is the right choice, essentially, with few words. And then she just repeats it with different emphasis, with emphasis on different words. It's just abysmal, but they didn't even change a single word in that sentence. And it's nonsensical. It makes her look very, well, arrogant, that she just doesn't accept where he's coming from. She just knows it better. And let me go back a bit, frame by frame. This looks cool. Yeah, that's my only comment. Well, not exactly. So this probably shows one of the early events in history when they were facing one of the main antagonists. I forgot his name. I'm not exactly an expert on Tolkien lore, so I don't exactly know his name, but I know he's a very powerful god. So you can see this is kind of a cosmic threat, a power level beyond their imagining, which fits this world. and it looks cool. And yeah, there's this very common motive with Tolkien that the very early history is very much like an actual mythology, very far-fetched, very much a conflict between gods, with focus on power levels beyond that of a human. And as we move further and further in time, it gets more grounded. And well, if I were to interpret Tolkien's work, I would assume that this is reminiscent of our own world, and that the mythology itself is not necessarily true. It's an interpretation of what might have happened, and probably a part of their belief system, and not necessarily an account of history. But they are going with the literal version, which is probably something the fans appreciate more than my take, but there you go.
What I have seen.
Yeah, in 2 days. Or 3.
Darkness will march over the
Earth with a capital E. That's probably an error on the part of whoever wrote the transcript or the subtitles, but or maybe he's abbreviating Middle Earth to Earth, but we are not necessarily on the same world. But never mind.
earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
That is how it works.
I am sorry, but their time has come.
And yeah, this line, if this is in reference to what I think it is, because the earlier line spoke about how it's the end of all peoples, and if this dwarf says, but their time has come, this is a very stoic response to it. So if they do something with this sentence can be a very powerful one. So they can do a lot with his character if this is indeed in reference to that assumption that everyone will die, and he is defiant to not give their aid, say their time has come. So I like this if it is the way I think it is.
The past is with us all. The past is dead.
Yeah, so these two sentences back to back, most have speculated that this is kind of a message to for people to distance themselves from the earlier works, from Tolkien's books and the Jackson trilogy and The Hobbit, which that's another story. And there is usually this sentiment that out with the old, in with the new in Hollywood. So I'm inclined to believe that this is probably meant to represent that sentimentality, but let's hope it's not.
We either move forward
Yeah.
or we die with it.
This could be the beginning of a new era.
But in this context, hearing this line, it's a semi-confirmation that they are trying to elevate themselves above the old works, to establish themselves as the definitive Lord of the Rings franchise or sub-franchise, I guess. So this is interesting to see or hear. Yeah, and here's a warg. I like them. They look like big hyenas. And this confirms that in one of the last trailer, I think, has a other monsters, which others have guessed are works, but it's clear that the old design still exists. So that's neat. Yeah, those feet, they look very odd. They are prosthetics, that's clear, but they don't look too good. And the lady here can't even walk normally with them. So, yeah. The money did not go to prosthetics, that's for sure. We still have 2 more trailers. And let me bring up the SDCC one. And let's see.
We thought the war.
Yeah, very strong start. First off, there are no dead bodies, so where did those helmets come from? Second, that's some fucking dedication to pile them up so high. And how did she do it without help? Or maybe she used magic, but she had to climb up to the top to put the helmets there. And since this is probably not a very stable structure, she probably knocked down quite a few every time she climbed up. So this could have taken quite long. And still, she's alone with no dead bodies. So maybe this is just a vision, but maybe don't start your trailers with such imagery.
Last was ended.
Today, our days of peace begin.
We thought our joys would be unending. We thought our light would never dim.
The dialogue is a bit better here. It's serviceable.
The skies are strange.
This very strange accent again.
It is here, Galadriel. The moment we feared.
Evil does not sleep.
Well, I didn't stop because of this imagery, but we'll talk about it. The thing is that so far, every trailer has been very generic, and this is a 3-minute trailer, so this was the first semi-long one. And this is all extremely generic. There's an unknown evil lurking there. There's the peace is going to end. There's going to be war. There's danger. Yada yada. So a good trailer would show some specifics to get you invested, and this is all very much fantasy sludge. And let me play this one.
It waits.
So they said evil and that it waits, and they showed these. I think they are elves. So I think their attempt was to confuse us and let us think that this is Soren, but it's not. Even though there were a lot of articles and videos about outraging about this, because this person looks very much like a far cry from what we know of Soren. So this is a bit of a trick, which is very odd, I think, but there's nothing wrong with the design. Although, let me go back a bit. Who has their cowl on their head like that? It's probably there to cover her ear for the trailer, but it looks very strange.
Beyond the darkness, tempting shadow, to barriers all beneath the mountain.
He has no one name, but many.
Nice.
Have you heard of him, lad? Have you heard of Sauron?
This scene, out of context, is extremely odd. It's like he's a Jehovah's Witness for Sauron, and he's trying to tell or ask a child if he has heard of Sauron, and maybe he's trying to spread his message of, I don't know. It's very odd. But it's probably there for a name drop, because Galadriel has just said that he has many names, not one. So he says it's Sauron, so we know he's the subject right now. But then again, there's going to be another strange trickery. I don't think that is Sauron. He looks very monstrous, and maybe I'm wrong, but fingers do look a bit like his gauntlet in the Jackson trilogy, but I thought he didn't look like a monster. Maybe I'm wrong.
If the evil rising is left unchecked, it will take us all.
This is one of those strange scenes where I think he has an arrow in his hand, but he has a torch in the other, so he's not drawing it. And in the back there are archers with actual bows, so what is he holding? And why?
Find the light, and the shadow will not find you.
Yeah, this is one of the brief glimpses at the fact that orcs do have some kind of culture. They wear very distinct helmets. They have a very distinct style of architecture. And even though they are essentially corrupted elves, as far as I know, they have been affected by this in a way that they still have their free will to an extent to develop cultures and have their own identity. And it would be interesting to explore that, even though I have heard a lot of people that we don't need relatable orcs, we don't need shades of gray, we don't need them, but they would be nice. They would certainly improve our understanding of them. Maybe they are a tragic race of creatures, and the corruption is not necessarily does not necessarily mean that they are evil. It means that they are compelled to do things in the name of Sauron or at the command of Sauron. It would be nice to explore what they think of this, if they could be free of the corruption, if they would live a different life if they were set free. It's an idea that will probably not get explored. I like the helmets though, even though they are probably not functional.
Together we can survive this! Fight with me.
Oh my god. I missed this earlier. So this is proof that elves have to have weight, because he kicked a huge bloody boulder off of there and probably broke his feet, or one of his foot in the process.
Each of us must decide who we shall be.
This dialogue, each of us.
Each of us.
this dialogue. It's beyond generic. It literally doesn't have a meaning in context or out of it. Each of us must decide who we shall be. Yes, that's called free will. Some of us don't get many decisions, but it's something each of us has to make inherently. It's by design. So this just, it's very generic and odd.
Must decide who we shall be.
There can be no trust between hammer and rock.
That's a good line, I think. And very Dwarven. Or
Eventually,
Dwarvish.
one or the other must surely break.
You have been told many lies of Middle-earth.
And that is probably one of the worst examples of CGI. It's terrible. And he starts going backwards before 3 of the hands even touch him. So at best, he would be twisted on his axis by the hand on his left shoulder. But no, he starts going back immediately because CGI artist and the actor did not agree on what he should do. And I think this one, yeah. Remember the Barrett. Member berries all the way. Well, sorry for mispronouncing Soren. That's how I pronounce it. So, I don't know. I thought that's how you're supposed to. Oh yeah. Let me tell you how much I hate trailers before trailers. I click on a trailer, I do have the patience to wait for a few seconds for it to start. I don't have to see 6 seconds of a condensed version of the trailer to keep my attention. And even if people with ADHD would watch this, I think this is probably worsening their condition because you are essentially giving them another dose of quick images, which probably had the effect on them to easily lose focus. So this is probably not helping them, although it does help your massive corporation to keep people's eyes on the trailer. By the way, I also love that the trailer starts with the sentence, "Watch the new trailer now." Yes, that's what I'm doing. Thank you. What are they doing here? They are just, it's a tug of war. I don't know. It's like a concert with people just pushing each other around. There are a lot of blades and general weaponry all around, and no one's hitting, no one's killing. They're just pushing each other around. It's very, and of course the person that is in focus that we should be looking at doesn't have a helmet, because that's how soldiers should operate.
My brother gave his life hunting the enemy. His task is now mine.
I hate this sound. It has a shield on. This knife has a shield on, so it shouldn't give that sound. And the fact that it has that sound, it suggests that she's cutting off his fingers accidentally. Why? it could be a cloth on cloth sound, but it's a blade sliding. And and by the way, this is probably the worst kind of music they could have put under something related to Lord of the Rings. It's a modern song. It's also pretty bad. Well, I don't know much about music to evaluate it objectively, but I don't like it.
Stand with me.
This is also one of those very fake-looking scenes. It's probably the lighting. But I didn't point all of them out. It's just... It was very expensive, and they didn't manage to make it at least look real.
Ours was no chance meeting. Not fate. Nor destiny. Ours was the work of something greater.
This begs the question of what is greater than fate or destiny. I was of the opinion that fate and destiny either mean that the outcome was very much tilted in favor of one choice being made, or one event coming to pass, or simply that our fate is written and it cannot be changed. It's how it's always going to happen. So what can be something greater than fate or destiny? We won't get an answer, but it's one of those sentences again that just doesn't click with me. This music. And yeah, here are the Entelodons. They look neat. I don't have too many comments about them. I like them. They look realistic. They actually look good. It's good CGI. One of the rare occasions.
Each of us. Everyone must decide who.
And this line again. Everyone must decide who we shall be. Nothing salad.
We shall be.
I am not the hero you seek.
By the way, you probably all know, but this person is supposed to be Sauron. I hope I pronounced it correctly this time. Yeah, that's my only comment.
Whatever it was you did, be free of it.
One day this will be your kingdom.
And this is the time I question that, are they related? Because, well, he could be his stepson or his nephew or something. It's just odd that she has a very distinct complexity and he is very much of a lighter complexion. It's possible that they don't actually share any blood and they're still related. It's just, again, odd.
Raise your sail and let it go.
Choose not the path of fear.
Returning to the issue of dwarves and elves not having any agriculture, this place on the right, this looks very suitable for some kind of farm. And the fact that there's only moss on the rocks and a bit of shrubbery. Dwarves probably do not have fields of grain, unfortunately.
Yeah. But that of faith.
One thing we can do, better than any creature in all Middle-earth, we stay true to each other.
This is one of those. another one of those inspirational sentences that don't mean anything. We can do staying true to each other better than anyone else, and okay, good for you.
Other. With our hearts. Even bigger in our...
Even bigger than our feet. I've heard that the Harfoots are going to have some sort of a foot fetish, in this sense that they are going to refer to their feet a lot, and it would be okay culturally, but he says that even bigger than our feet. They are hobbits, so their own biology should be the baseline for them. It should be normal. So to them, their large feet are the normal size, and every other race, probably except dwarves, has small feet. And them referencing that their hearts are even bigger than our feet, beside being a very stupid sounding line, it kind of destroys their self-image, because they don't see themselves as the default, they see themselves as an offshoot, which is not how it should be, I think.
feet.
I can survive this.
Again, this is pretty, but probably a real place. And I stopped before we could hear the line. That's also very generic. We can survive this.
You and I.
There you go, Mrs.
Commander! Wait! No! We keep moving!
So this is either brilliant characterization of Galadriel as a cruel leader who is focused on getting the thing done with no regard to the cost of lives or the damage done, or it's a huge miss, because she is telling her soldiers to leave a person who has just fallen behind, that they have to move forward, they don't have the time to help them, which is a very cruel decision, but perhaps given their situation it is the only right choice, and if they stay back they are all going to die. Perhaps that's a tough decision, and she doesn't even show any sign of hesitation. So maybe this is good characterization, maybe they don't know what they did. Let's hope for the former.
Why do you keep fighting?
There is a tempest in me!
And this line out of context, she's just standing in some sort of hall and everyone is seemingly peaceful, and she has a tempest in her. I wonder what sort of conversation would prompt her to tell that, but I wouldn't have put this in the trailer even if it is well justified. It's an answer to the previous question, but they're clearly in a different setting. If I go back a bit, more. So clearly they are in some sort of forge, and now it's a hole of some sort. So they are not connected. Maybe they are trailer lines.
It's a tempest in me.
Ah, the ice climbing.
Galadriel, put up your sword.
Let me go back a bit. They knock orcs over who are very patiently waiting for their turn instead of ducking, using a chain which is almost invisible due to the quality of the footage. But I think with the amount of people they knock over, I'm not sure if the orcs had any sort of pushback and didn't just lie down like the actors that they are, then I think the chain would have either been pulled from their hands, or they would have been pulled off their horses, or the horses would have stopped because there was too much pushback. I think this is probably one of those cases that needs an actual experiment. I don't think this is how it would work, but even if it would, the orcs are very dumb here. And also they are now just incapacitated and not actually killed. So, and I think they had weapons. Yeah, they had weapons, so they could have very easily cut the horses or the riders, and this maneuver would have been pointless because they knocked over a few and they lost 2 cavalrymen. It's one of those quote-unquote tactics that seem cool from a movie-making perspective, but don't necessarily make sense on a battlefield. Ah, yes. When I have my slaves chained, I like to give them a very long chain so they can potentially escape if they are agile enough. They can jump high enough. But seriously, shouldn't he be chained to another person or a rock or anything or a huge ball of iron? But no, he just has a chain that doesn't really bind him, which is, and he also has what looks like an actual weapon that doesn't seem like a tool. If it is a pickaxe, the top half, which is the pick portion, is facing the wrong direction. It should be pointing downwards because the strike would be downwards as well. So the point being up is very awkward. I mean, he would have to sort of stab at the rocks to actually use it. And there's also an axe half, I don't know, to cut their chains with, or the orcs. It's an interesting lift or elevator. I would have personally put some sort of railing here because it just has to stagger once and they can very easily fall probably a huge distance, but that's just a nitpick.
Without it, what am I to be?
Another thing about the trailer is that we've just gone about half a minute between the previous sentence and this one, so this just comes at you out of the blue. When I first saw it, I didn't remember the previous sentence, so I thought this was just an out of context line that didn't make sense. So this is also one of those things that you probably should pay attention when making a trailer. People need to understand the few lines that are said. And, well, I didn't at first. And I think that's the end. There's nothing, yeah. So, yeah. It's a very mixed bag. I saw a few neat things. There were a few good lines. But in general, there was a lot of bad dialogue, a lot of bad CGI, and just in general, very nonsensical things. So it doesn't give me a lot of faith. It certainly did not invoke the same feeling that the Jackson trilogy did. They went for a very different vibe, which is odd, considering that that is a very beloved trilogy, and they seem to be trying to be sort of a prequel to that. They, without actually saying, because they legally can't say that they are a prequel, that they are connected. They are trying to imply that they are, and yet they went for this wildly different tone. And yes, the speaking your truth line, I missed that. Yeah, I can do this. Highlighting comments. Yeah. I probably don't have to tell you that truth is a very, very definitively a one thing. There's no your truth, there's no their truth, there's one truth, and people believe different things. And having that song with these lyrics is pretty telling as well. Anyway, I think I'll be closing this one. We've gone through the trailers. The first episode will drop in about 4 days. Yeah, I will be watching each of them, and when it's finished, I will go through the whole series again, probably multiple times, and try and gather the notable issues and perhaps the good bits, like we did with the June video. I will still probably focus on world building as I usually do, but I will try and put in as much character and plot stuff as relevant. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you'll be here to watch the probably very long video when it's going to be done. And I don't know what time of the day it is for you. It's night for me, so have a good night. See ya.